What's going on, everybody? My name is Hydros and welcome back to some more My Hero Academia Ultra Impact, and today we're going to be doing our very first character tier list with all of these summonable UR characters in My Hero Academia Ultra Impact. So before we go ahead and get started, I want to preface this by saying this is my opinions on these characters. Now, if you have different opinions or same opinions, let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you want to make your own tier list with this right here, I will leave a link to the tier list maker in the description down below as well. And also save the images and tweet them at me if you want to share your tier list with me on Twitter at HydrosPlays. I would love to see your different tier lists as well. But let's go ahead and get started. But before we do, make sure you guys go down there, click that red subscribe button if you haven't already to join the heroes and villains community here today on Hydros Impact. Click that bell, turn on all notifications that we don't miss out on any future videos, whether it be gameplay, guides, summons, showcases, everything relating to My Hero Academia Ultra Impact. So this is my very first tier list with the summonable URs, and the one UR that's not on here, or actually two URs that aren't on this list currently. The UR Yellow All Might. UR Yellow All Might is not a summonable unit. He's a free-to-play unit now. He was summonable in the beta, but they changed it to where he's now obtainable in the USJ. So the yellow UR All Might is not on this list. And then also the blue Air Force Deku that is coming to the game on the 26th. He is not currently on this tier list because, you know, we don't know anything about him. I can't really judge a character if I do not know anything about the character overall. So that is pretty much why he's not here. And I will do another one once we get a few more characters. I'll do SR tier list. I'll do the free-to-play tier list if you guys really want to see them in the future. So here we go. My tier list on the summonable UR characters. All for One to start out with. All for One, he is definitely a very good unit to have in the game. One of his abilities buffs villain types, but the rest of it does not require him to be on a villain team. So All for One is definitely a very decent character. He is, you know, he deals out quite a bit of damage. He can reduce cooldown of your allies. He can reduce cooldown of action skills on himself with his plus ultra abilities. So he's a very decent character, but his auto skill, one of his auto skills kind of limits him just a smidgen, not a lot, but just a smidgen to all villain allies. So that's kind of where he's kind of all right, but he's not like super busted S tier. He's not like super, you know, down in the dumps D tier. I would say he's an A tier unit just based off of his abilities, giving cooldowns. But that, you know, if he buffs any ally critical rate, if it wasn't specifically to villains, that would be a little bit better. But All for One is definitely going to work well with this Shigaraki here, the UR Shigaraki. That's going to be where he shines best with Shigaraki on a villain team. So by himself though, he is pretty good, but definitely not the best, right? He's going to be A tier. Bakugo, boom, S tier. Hands down, Bakugo is one of the best units in the game to play with. Now, because Bakugo, not only does he buff his power by defeating enemies, so he gets a 5% power increase whenever he defeats enemies, and then his second auto skill gives him another power increase when he defeats enemies by 3% up to 30%. So, you know, that's getting that up to 30% increase, and then also that power increase by 5%. And then also he is plus ultra attack. Whenever he burns an enemy or he's facing a burned enemy, he's going to increase his power by 40% for the burn enemy as well. So he's going to be very, very good, and he's going to be a very good stacking unit in the game. And he is probably one of the best damage dealers in the game. And he also has an AoE. So he not only can he do single target enemy, he can do an AoE as well, which also has a chance to inflict blindness on all enemies. So that's going to be really good. His auto skill when HP is 50% or above does give him power increase by 20%, which is also really good. So he's going to get a lot of power buffs on this character, and he does work well, especially with this Momo here. So Momo and Bakugo is one to really look out for, but Bakugo is definitely one of the S tier. Now Ochako. Ochako is a healer. She is a healer. She also has a counter ability, and also when her counter ability activates, it also increases her power by 25%, if I'm not mistaken. But that allows her to then counter with a higher power increase. She also, as I said, is a healer, and then also she can increase all allies critical rate as well with her plus ultra attack. And then also she increases her own speed when her evasion is active. So being a healer, she's a definitely decent damage dealer, but given that she has a counter, she increases allies critical rate. She then can increase her own speed. She can then counter normal attacks, and then while increasing her power. The only thing that's kind of limited about her is her first auto skill, which is only green type ally buff, so that does limit her. But I would say she definitely is an A tier unit altogether with that. So that's going to be where Ochako is for me currently. Now Momo Yaoyorozu She, as I said, is a good unit to pair with Bakugo because her ability allows her to buff all blue type allies by 15%. So she's going to be a definitely decent character to run with your blue team or Bakugo in general. And then she also removes a status condition from allies and then heals your HP by 25%. So she definitely removes a status condition. Let's say you have like freeze or burn or anything like that. Momo's going to remove that on one of your from your allies. Then also she does have an AoE also, which also decreases enemy speed by say 15%. So that's going to be very, very good for Momo. And as well as, like I said, increasing all blue skill allies, and then at the start of a battle, all allies are immune to a debuff. I would say Momo is an S tier character, not just because she works with Bakugo, but because she can remove a debuff once at the start of the battle, and then also when 50% HP or less, she gets a plus ultra 20% gauge once only as well. Deals damage to all allies, decreases enemy speed, then also removes status condition from your allies as well, definitely making her a very, very decent unit. And then also her plus ultra also helps fill your team's plus ultra gauge by 20%. Also definitely is a unit to consider when re-rolling. Also, she is a very, very good unit, not the like highest damage dealer, but one of the best supports that you could probably have currently in the game. So let's see, this is the red Izuku Midoriya, the red Deku that is currently in the game, the blow of luck Deku. Now this Deku is, he's I don't know how to place him, because when he has his abilities, he inflicts damage to himself. He can increase his power, but also receiving amount of damage when he attacks. So not only he increases his power, but that also leaves him vulnerable to then getting more damage inflicting to himself, not along with taking enemy damage. And then also, one of his auto skills is dependent if he gets a critical hit. So if he doesn't get a critical hit, he's not going to get the power increase. And then that's just, and then also if your HP is 50% or less, you're gaining automatic 10 HP recovery for 3 turns. Now, that seems good on paper, but if he's inflicting damage to himself, that HP recovery is going to pretty much null and void. You're going to have to run him with a healer on your team, or most likely 2 healers. You're going to probably want to run him with Ochako and Momo, just to mitigate a lot of that damage that he's going to be taking. I feel like if you're fighting a battle, he's going to be taking out really, really quickly. So I'm going to put him at C tier just for now, just because he's not the greatest, right? He's good. He's not awful, but he's not good, right? So that's pretty much where I'm going to put him at this current time. Now we have the yellow Deku, my own skill, Izuku Midoriya. Now he is a little bit different than the red one. He also deals damage, but his plus ultra deals damage based on the enemy's speed, which is really interesting as well. So if your enemy has a high speed stat, he's going to be dealing a good bit of damage. But if your enemies, don't have that, high speed stat, then it's going to be like, he's probably not going to deal too much damage with his plus ultra attack as well. So that's where he's going to be a little bit underwhelming, most likely. Or I think it's not damage based on speed, it's damage based on his speed, not enemy speed. So it's damage based on his speed. So if he's not getting speed buffs, so if he most likely will have to be run with speed buffers, which also he does increase his own speed by 40% for 3 turns with his first action skill. So that does help him. So he's going to get that 40% speed buff. And then also his ability as well, that same action skill gives him a 30% plus ultra gauge increase. So he's going to be getting that plus ultra quicker, allowing him to activate that plus ultra speed increase damage based on speed, right? Because he has that speed increase. And then also his second ability, he's increasing his power. He inflicts a portion of attacked enemy damage on himself. So he is also a self-inflictor, but not quite the extent of this Deku. I feel like the yellow one is a little bit better than the red Deku, just because he's not, this one is inflicting a lot more damage to himself than this one would be if you're using this one's second skill. And then also this yellow Deku is increasing his plus ultra gauge by 30% when his HP is 50% or below from one time. And then he's also getting a critical rate increase by 20% when his HP is 50% higher. So I'm gonna put him at B tier. He's not like super busted A tier, but he's not super bad. He's not like this, but he's like in the middle. He's a good mid-tier unit to want to run with, and definitely can be good if you have speed buffers on your team. That's where he's going to be dependent, increasing his speed. And then also that, obviously this one is going to be self-inflicting, so this one's a little bit better. So that's where that Deku is going to be placed on a tier list currently. That's where I feel those two are different in each other, right? So Aizawa, Now, Aizawa is a pro hero buffer, right? So he is going to be something that is dependent on your team being pro heroes. Now, Deku, Ochako, Momo, Bakugo, they're not pro heroes. Pro heroes being something like All Might or this Hawks right here. So Aizawa is going to probably be a good unit to run with, like I said, the free All Might or this UR Hawks. But by himself, I feel like he's a very decent unit to have because he's removing all buffs from an attacked enemy on his plus ultra. He has a medium chance to seal skills on the enemy for 2 turns on his plus ultra. He has the ability to randomly remove 1 buff from the attacked enemy on his first action skill. And then if you get a chain of 2 or more succession, he has a medium chance to seal skills for 2 turns on his second action skill. And then he also is increasing his speed by 30% when his HP is 50% or less. So just ignoring the auto skills for a second, his action skills, so he has the chance to seal enemy skills and then also remove buffs from the enemy. So that makes him a pretty decent unit. I feel like he does deal out a quite decent amount of damage when using him. I definitely think that sealing definitely will help out in a long boss fight, especially the USJ VE tower. Definitely Aizawa is going to shine best by sealing those skills a lot. So definitely think that Aizawa is an A tier unit just because he does seal skills, right? So then we have this green Todoroki. Now this Todoroki is a lot of status infliction type of character. Now this Todoroki could be run with Bakugo in various scenarios because of his burn chance. He does have a chance to inflict burn for 3 turns. He does have a chance to inflict freezing for a couple turns. He does have a chance. He can increase his power by 30%, but a lot of it is, you know, chance dependent. A lot of his abilities are chance dependent because of his freeze and burn chances being medium. So you're not, you know, obviously having a high chance of getting those. His damage output isn't super high. It's only 550% damage on his plus ultra, and then his action skills are only 175. So that's not really a lot of damage, but both of his action skills are AoE, so he's attacking all enemies, so he's dealing damage to at least all the enemies on the field and getting those chances to burn, freeze, and stuff like that, right? So definitely all right. And then when your HP is 50% or higher, he's going to increase his plus ultra gauge by 25% once, and also a lot of his dependency is on his plus ultra attack because you're going to want to then use him and utilize him to rush your plus ultra as quickly as possible to get that out and, you know, to deal out the massive damage first and foremost. So that's where he's going to really shine. He's increasing a lot of his plus ultra gauge. He gets 25% from an action skill, 25% from one of his auto skills. And then, you know, and then he also gets a chance to inflict freeze if its HP is 30% or less, which is decent. I mean, it's pretty good. Also, if his HP is 50% or less, he's going to increase his power by 30%. So this Todoroki, definitely not D tier, obviously, but I don't think he's like super busted. I don't know if he's quite A tier. Again, he's very heavily dependent on his plus ultra. I would say he's around B tier just because, again, he's heavily dependent on getting that plus ultra attack with his abilities. He can get it rather quickly, given his abilities, you know, increasing by 20, increasing by 30, increasing by 20%, stuff like that. You know, he's definitely going to do that. And then also if you pair him with a character that also increases, like if you pair him with another character increasing allies plus ultra gauge by 20%, definitely he will shine pretty good pretty quickly, given that you get that plus ultra attack rather quickly as well. So he would do well with Momo. He would do well with Bakugo. These 3 here, these Bakugo, Momo, Todoroki, definitely a good set team to have. But by himself, Todoroki is not like super amazing. He's good, but he's not like super duper broken amazing, right? So definitely not that. So Kirishima is another unit that's gonna be heavily based on your defenses. He's a very decent tank and defensive unit you're gonna want to be running on your team if you happen to get him, because Kirishima, he does deal out quite a bit of decent damage. He deals 300% on an action skill, 550% on his plus ultra, but he is giving himself barriers on himself for 3 turns on his plus ultra. He's giving himself barrier on his action skill for 3 turns, and he's also reducing damage on his action skill by 30% for 1 turn. So when he's getting that barrier, he's reducing damage. He has barrier. He's not going to take pretty much any damage. He does increase only red type allies. So this Kirishima is going to be definitely well suited for this Deku to help increase that Deku's power, right? But again, that Deku's inflict on himself is going to be rather good. So this is like a sword and shield type of duo in a way, right? So, but anyway, aside from his red type ability, he then also increases plus ultra gauge by 5% every time you inflict critical damage. So if you have him giving crit, he's going to get that plus ultra gauge really quickly on your team. But the main thing that he does, he's also counters all normal attacks on his first action skill for 3 turns, and then he's reducing damage taken by 30% for 2 turns. So he is going to be a very, very good tank to be running on your team. Where do I think he goes? I want to say A, but I also want to say S, just because that's super decent to have on your team. He's led me through a lot of fights in this game currently. I think I'm going to say he's S tier for now. Well, maybe no. I'm gonna say he's A tier, just because the auto skill being limited to the red type abilities, that does limit his capabilities quite a bit. But he is definitely a very, very good defensive unit. High A tier. He's almost S tier, but not quite there yet for me. But he definitely is a high A tier unit. Now, Hawks, the next one. Hawks, we're getting down to the wire. Final 2. Hawks. He definitely is going to be a unit that is going to be dependent on evasion for some of his abilities. Hawks is, let's see, Hawks basically increases his power by 30% on his plus ultra. If the enemy has a speed debuff, he gives evasion to himself on his plus ultra. So that's going to be dependent if you can get evasion, if an enemy has a debuff on speed. That's very, very specific. It has to be a speed debuff on the enemy. So he could work well, given that if you have a speed debuffer on your team. But other than that, if you don't have a speed debuffer or you're not giving speed debuffs, then he's not going to get that evasion. But he does work well with Ochako. He would work well with Ochako because Ochako gives evasion to all allies. So if you're pairing him with her, that's going to be helping him in a lot, because if he has evasion active, his second auto skill is increasing his power by 25%. So that's going to be very decent for him when paired with Ochako. But by himself, without Ochako, that second auto skill is like literally not even going to be active most of the time, right? So, and then also his second action skill gives all allies a second chance to do a normal attack. So, you have your basic attacks, your action skill attacks, and your plus ultra attacks. All the basic attacks, he gives all your allies the second chance to basically just do basic attack damage a second time. So that's going to be pretty decent as well. He's not super busted in that way, right? He's also increasing allies' speed for 3 turns. His damage output is good-ish, but it's not super amazing. I would say Hawks is B tier. That's probably where I would place him. Again, it depends on his evasion, getting that evasion. And he can only give evasion to himself if the enemy has a speed debuff. So if you don't have a speed debuffer, that limits him quite a bit on that evasion. And then if you don't give evasion to himself, he's not going to get that 25% power increase. So that's where he's going to lie for me. Now, Shigaraki is another unit that is heavily dependent on specific things. Now, Shigaraki is dependent on if you're fighting pro heroes. Now, there are quite a bit of pro hero bosses in the game. You're going to fight a lot of them. Obviously, throughout the lifetime of this game, you're probably going to fight a lot of them. But given that if we don't have a lot of pro heroes, or maybe they start introducing a lot of villain bosses in the game, Shigaraki's not going to shine too much, because a lot of his abilities are dependent if the enemy is a pro hero. And that can hurt him in the long run if we're getting a lot more villain enemies coming in the future as well. And he's also a villain type buffer, so he does work well on a team with All For One. That is pretty much his best partner, specifically, is going to be All For One. I'm not trying to place him in D tier. I'm trying to get him out of this. Either way, I'm just going to hold it right here. So yeah, his first auto skill is increasing allies' power by 25% if they are a villain ally. So again, he's going to work well with All For One. Definitely not going to be suited for a hero team. If you're running him with like Bakugo, Deku, anything like that, he's definitely not going to be doing anything much to help out the team. The only thing that gives him a chance is that he applies fear to an enemy for, it has a medium chance. If the enemy's a pro hero, he, has the chance to deal an additional 40% damage on his plus ultra. If the enemy is a pro hero, he has the chance to then decrease enemy attack by 25% for 3 turns if the enemy is a pro hero. So a lot of his abilities are dependent if the enemy is a pro hero, and that just makes him, even if he outputs a lot of damage, that makes him not so great. Especially, again, if we have a lot of heroes in the future, or if we have, if we have a lot of villains coming in the future, Shigaraki is going to be drowned out really quickly. So it really just depends on the future of that. But right now, there are a decent balance of heroes versus villain characters in the game. So Shigaraki can shine in some of the areas of the game, especially if you pair him with All For One. But by himself, this is pretty much where I'm going to put him at the bottom of the list, because he is just again, heavily dependent on being against pro heroes. That's obviously that's what he's like in the anime and the manga and stuff like that, but and they really went ham with it in his ability. So hopefully maybe a new Shigaraki will come, maybe kind of reduce the amount of pro hero necessity on his action skills and his other abilities. That would be great. But right now, that's where I'm going to place him in the D tier. Again, he's heavily reliant on one specific thing, and that just hinders him quite a bit, right? So that is going to be my overall tier list for the game currently right now for My Hero Academia Ultra Impact for the day one launch characters, for the summonable UR characters. If you guys agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments down below. If you want to make your own tier list, I do have the link in the description down below for you guys to make your own. Tweet at me the images of your tier list at HydrosPlays on Twitter. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe, turn on all notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys. Have a fantastic day.